Hello, welcome back to Weird Reads. Today I am joined by my friend Eric S. Brown, and today we are going to be talking about animal attack books. Now, this is before we get into that, can you introduce yourself quickly, Eric?
Sure. I'm Eric S. Brown. I'm a writer. I've been writing a long time. I'm mostly known for Bigfoot books and Bigfoot movie related stuff, but I write a little bit of everything here and there. That's pretty much me.
And animal attack books they're pretty much a passion of yours, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've always loved them growing up, but in 2023 or maybe no early 2024, I read Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix, and it just kind of rekindled it all for me. So
Mhm.
I've been on like a animal attack reading binge for the last year, and I actually, after reading all those books, I wrote my own canine attack book, Snarl, that's out now from Evil Cookie Publishing, and it's kind of my take on the dog subgenre of the animal attack subgenre. It's very much like Cujo meets 28 Days Later. So
Yeah, that was a fun book to read. Well, we'll talk about it later. That book goes. There's one scene in there that will live rent free in my in my mind. It involves test intestines. It's going to be in my mind for the rest of my life.
well, I don't know whether to say I'm sorry or thank you, but
Both are appreciated. Yeah, no, it was an awesome book though. It's really fun. So how has your year been since we last talked? We talked about a year ago.
wow, always busy, always busy. Collecting vintage horror paperbacks has definitely completely replaced collecting comic books in my life. I was
Yeah.
a comic collector for over 40 years. Now I just buy the occasional omnibus to read. And now my living room has been taken over by horror paperbacks from hell. So,
Nice.
not you can't tell that from looking behind me. Those are still my Marvel omnibuses and Battlestar Galactica and Red Sonja stuff. But trust me, the other side of the living room looks like Grady Hendrix vomited all over the place. You know,
Yeah. Do the comics
bad
take up
way
a
to put that, Grady Hendrix. Sorry.
do the comics take up a lot of space too?
I have a second house in another town for the comics.
Oh wow.
So yeah, if
That-
all the comics were here, we would not be able to function. So.
That's a lot, yeah. So you've released a few new books since then, including Snarl. What are some of the other books that you've released?
I've done two more Bigfoot books for Severed Press. Sasquatch Nightmare, which is kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street meets Bigfoot War,
Nice.
and the Sasquatch Murders, which is kind of a throwback to my book Manhunt. It's got the very serial killer versus Sasquatch vibe going on with a little bit of I hate to say J.K. Rowling's Gilbreth books with the cuckoo's calling, but I was going for that kind of vibe with one of the detectives because Cormoran Strike's a great character.
Yeah.
And but the book does focus primarily on the serial killer and the Sasquatch, just like Manhunt did.
Awesome. Now, before we begin, we go into the animal attack thing here. We already announced it on Facebook. I thought we'd
Mhm.
announce it here as well. But you and I are currently writing a book together. I think we're at the halfway mark right now.
We are at the halfway point.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
virtual
it's
high five.
yes, indeed. And hopefully we will fly through the rest of that book and it will be out hopefully this summer. Who knows, this summer, this fall from Evil Cookie.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you too for willing to bring me aboard or on board. It's been a lot
Oh,
of fun so far.
my pleasure. I mean, years ago when I edited an anthology based on the Chud movie, you did one of the best stories in the book. I mean, so and we became kind of internet friends. So it was just a logical step to say, "Hey, Jason,
Yeah.
would you like to do this?" Since we both like that genre.
Well,
So
thank you. It's been an awesome ride so far. So animal attacks. Now I have to admit, I have read my fair share of animal attacks, but nowhere near where you have. I love creature features too, but if you look at because later on we're going to be talking about our honorable mentions and our top threes, you're going to notice that a lot of mine are like the mythological type creatures, not necessarily dogs or cats. but
gotcha.
but uh, but I admire your knowledge of animal attack books, and I know that you've been wanting to do this, so let's get into it. So what defines an animal attack novel for you? Is it just limited to animals, or can we add, as I said just now, mythological creatures that are possibly real, maybe not? You know what I mean?
To me, I would go with just animals, plants, and insects. Those would be the three that constitute an animal attack. There can be a supernatural element in the book, but most of the time it's eco horror. It's some kind of mutation or toxic waste kind of thing, or some kind of disease or virus that's turned the animals against humanity, or just nature taking vengeance on us for destroying the planet. That's the core of an animal attack book. However, there are very realistic ones that don't fall into that, like Jaws. Jaws is just a big great white being itself and killing
Hmm.
a bunch of people. So
There's like I remember, I don't know if it's true or not. It might be. It's the same with bears. They say once. I don't know if it's the same with sharks though, because sharks can't actually eat us. They can kill us, of course, and they can try to eat us,
right.
but they end up not eating us. But bears, they say, once they get like the taste for human flesh, they
Mhm.
crave it. Like, do you believe in that? Like, is that true, or is it? Do you think maybe a myth on its own?
Well, I can't. I would say with some animals, certainly. I just finished reading Killer by Peter Tonkin,
Hmm.
and the main character in it is a military trained killer whale, and it definitely acquires a taste for human flesh. Because I mean, that's just the premise of the book. It's
Yeah.
trained by humans, and one day it accidentally kills an emerald who came to check out the place, and gets the taste of human flesh from him, and then they shoot it in the face and it runs off. So it's got like this mixed mingling of, oh gosh, humans hurt me, with, oh gosh, humans taste good, and it's a wild ride. I mean, Peter Tonkin is probably famous for saying, yeah, at the time Jaws came out, he was already a writer, and one of his friends said, "Hey, can you do better than Jaws?" And he said, "No, but I can do bigger." And I can totally relate to that in my career. I'm not always the better, but I strive for the bigger.
Yeah.
And Killer is one heck of a read. And it's one
Nice.
of like only two killer whale books that have ever been done in the genre, to my knowledge. There's Killer by Peter Tonkin and Orca, which there's a
Orca.
movie of.
Yeah.
And those are like the only killer whale books.
Yeah. My wife's mom gave went into labor while watching the movie version of Orca.
Oh wow, that must have been an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and she says that's probably why she's afraid of horror movies. Have you seen that movie, Orca? I
I
haven't.
have seen Orca, but it's been a very long time.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So animals, why do they attack? Is it just the instinct, or excuse me here? Is it just the instinctual fear of being eaten alive, or is there something else to the effectiveness of animal attack horror? Why is it so scary?
I think because realistically it could happen. I mean, we could screw up the planet enough to the point where Mother Nature turns on us and just unleashes some horrible virus, or some kind of attack. And then you've got all the bioengineering going on today, and the chemicals and the pollutants. I mean, it's a very realistic trope
Hmm.
in that sense. So I think it's scary because it could be real, and especially in the case of animals like dogs and house cats. There's this whole companionship, friendship thing that gets turned completely on its head.
Hmm.
Cujo is a great example of that. And I know you're a fan of Cujo
Hmm.
because Cujo is just this lovable big dog who would never hurt anyone, and through no fault of his own, he gets rabies, and then he becomes like this vicious killer, and it turns everything on its head. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because one of my questions here is about Disney and how Disney has made animals, including the ones that will kill us, with no question asked. They've made them into these furry, companionable creatures. Do you think, and you watch TikTok videos and whatnot, and maybe Facebook videos and whatnot of people befriending bears. Do you think this has desensitized us to the real threat of animals?
Oh, absolutely. I think in our modern culture, we're so comfortable, especially in America, and probably Canada too, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
that we're just cell phones and laptops and comfort and grocery stores, and we forget all about what it's like to be out there in the wild. So when we see a wild animal, our first instinct might be, "Oh, that's cute," and then we go up and it rips our face off.
Yeah.
I mean, because no matter how much we humanize them in our own brains, animals are still animals, and they're going to be
Yeah.
driven by their own base instincts. And sometimes the instincts is, "Hey, I'm bigger than you, and I'm going to eat you," or "Hey, you've intruded upon my territory, and you're not supposed to be here." And they're
Yeah.
not very kind about it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, you see people, you see the dark side of that too. You see videos of where people like they see a moose, which you don't want to approach, or a bear, and they're like, "Oh, I want to get a selfie with this animal," and they approach it, and then the animal attacks, and they're like, "Why did it attack me?"
Oh yeah, for sure. I have a book here that I had not planned on showing that I'm actually opening right now because it's wrapped up in bubble wrap, which is a perfect example of what we're talking about because it can get very crazy in the animal attack genre. But this book right here, I think it's pronounced Mousum, is about a killer deer of all things. There's
Oh,
actually
nice.
a deer going around and killing people, and it it's one that's not eco horror. It is a Native American shaman who has this vengeance thing, and he takes over the deer and possesses it, and starts killing people with a deer.
That's awesome. There, I think honestly, we come from a place where we knew better. Um,
Oh, absolutely,
I mean,
yeah. I mean,
animals attack for different reasons, right? Like they're hungry, or they're defending their babies, or they're sick. But a lot of people don't realize that even the small, cute ones will attack. I have a kind of a funny story about an ex girlfriend I was with. She was the type of woman who, anytime she saw an animal on the side of the road, she'd make me stop the car so we could chase it off the road, which was
oh,
honorable.
mhm.
But this one time, there's two beavers crossing the road. I'm assuming it was the mama and the papa.
Yeah, I
So
assume they could be kind of vicious too.
they can be, because we pulled over, and she gets out of the car and she's stomping her foot and she's like hissing at them and shooing them with her arms. And they both tilted their heads at the same time and turned around and looked at us. And right then I knew something was wrong, right? They didn't run right away. They were going into attack mode. And certainly they turned around and they charged at us, making these weird sounds. And she panicked and tripped over the curb. And so she's like on the ground squirming. So I had to grab her by the coat that she was wearing and drag her to uh, the car where she got in. And then by that time, though, they were like there, right? And so I jumped over the trunk of the car, like slid across it. It's like an action movie almost, right?
Deep hazard, yeah.
Yeah, and then I landed
Boy,
on
I'm
the
from
other
the
side,
South.
and
When you talk about sliding from over a car hood, that
yeah,
comes into my mind. Yeah.
yeah, I landed on the other side, jumped in the driver's side, and took off. But that was like a crazy, crazy
Well, I'm
period.
glad you guys survived.
Yeah, I have no idea what they would have done had they caught us, but I'm assuming that they had babies nearby, and they weren't thinking of themselves. They were probably thinking of
Mhm,
their young. Um, but we've also learned about animals, and that's kind of got lost, I think.
mhm.
In the whole Disney and TikTok age. But
Absolutely.
we've learned a lot about animals and why they attack. They're not just evil; they're doing what they do. They're hungry.
Mhm.
They're sick, or they're protecting their babies. And I think
Or
people,
territory.
yeah,
Yeah.
or their territory. Yeah, it's their area. When you go into the woods, you're entering their
Mhm,
territory. It's important to remember that, and I just kind of wanted to stress that because there's a lot of people out there. I think they might be living in a little bit of the world of fantasy.
mhm.
Now, I want to. Oh, you were going to say something?
I was going to say you get more hate mail for killing animal characters than you do for killing children because we have humanized our pets so much, and there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. I have a dog that I completely adore,
yeah,
and I have a cat too, and we kind of get along, but but I
yeah.
mean, we're just inclined to think that way in terms of modern culture.
Hmm.
Uh,
With the cat, cats are funny creatures. Like some of them are just violent and vile little creatures, right?
That is true. I had a big Maine Coon when my wife and I first got married, named Howard after Howard Lovecraft. I love that cat to death, but the cat I have right now, her name is Blackie, and she is a demon. All she does is terrorize the dog and myself. I think that's her favorite pastime.
She probably enjoys herself, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So animal attacks in big cities. Now you're kind of chiding me. You're like, oh,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you have who have not read these books, but honestly, most animal attack books do take place in like
That is true.
in the
That is
woods
true.
or in like remote areas, but there's not as many big city attack
There's
animal
not as
attack.
many, but there's still more than you might think there would be. As a kid, I read this one right here, Night of the Toy Dragons. It's
Yeah.
about albino caimans, little tiny caimans who just swarm in hundreds of thousands of numbers, eating human flesh in the sewers of this giant city. I mean, I think it's New York. I can't remember where it's actually set, but I mean, it is great. And then you got classic movies like Alligator, same trope, same animal there. And then, of course, you have British writer James Herbert. I
Hmm.
think The Rats is set right outside of London or in London.
Yeah.
And then, not Lair. Hold on one second. John Halkin, who wrote 4 Animal Attack books, almost all of his are set in urban settings. Like Bloodworm here, London becomes like this post-apocalyptic wasteland of biker gangs and people
Hmm.
fighting to stay alive because these giant bloodworms and this other symbiotic insect with him just destroyed the city. But I mean, there's a lot of urban stuff out there. It's just not as prevalent as you said.
Yeah. That Bloodworm book, do you know if that's still in print at all? Even in ebook?
Uh, I I think typical it is not in print unless you're in the UK. I'm not sure if it's in print over there. In the States, here in America, copies probably gonna run you around $75 if you find one.
Wow.
Unless you
Yeah.
get lucky and find it in the wild in a used bookstore or something.
Yeah, 'cause she sent me three recommendations for that, I believe. And two of them I was able to find that I can read for free on my Kobo because I'm part of like the Kobo book club. And they were both on there and they were free. But the other one, the dragon one, that one is similar to the bloodworm. You can't find it unless you're willing to pay steep money. It's not available in ebook or anything.
Well, I took all my money that I was spending on comics and put it into vintage paperbacks, and that's my defense right there.
Yeah.
That reminded me, though. I also mentioned Vespers. Vespers has
Yeah.
a really, really terrible movie called Bats that was based on it.
Oh,
Beanie
interesting.
Meyer.
Yeah.
But the book is amazing. I mean, it ends the big climactic scenes in New York with 2 giant bats bringing just this legion of bats into New York, and the climactic battle takes place inside of the Statue of Liberty. So I mean,
Beautiful.
it's a must read for Animal
Yeah.
Attack people,
Yeah, I
and
got that.
definitely one of those cases that proves the book is better than the movie.
Yeah, I got that one for free on my Kobo with that book club. Um, and the other one too, I can't remember exactly what it was, but that one actually had an audiobook to it as well. So I downloaded both the ebook and the audiobook.
Well, Domain by James Herbert is another one I may have mentioned it. It's post-apocalyptic though. It takes place. It's the 3rd book in the Rats trilogy, so it's back in London, but it's after a nuclear war. So you have the rats just coming out and fully taking over. And there's a graphic novel called The City that comes right after Domain. Being
Awesome.
the novel, the trilogy is all novels, but after that, there's a part 4 that's a graphic novel.
Honestly, I think it's a fun idea to have animal attack, especially if it's like giant mutated animals
Oh yeah, yeah.
attacking big cities, because I think most people would feel safe because of the numbers of people in the city. So if animals were to attack, most people would be like, we'll get the military on it or whatever, and it'll be fine. But what if, you could obviously turn it around and make it so it's not fine, right?
And not even the military is not always enough. I mean, if you've ever heard of Guy and Smith, he wrote
Yeah,
a series of books called Attack of the Crabs.
yeah.
Yeah, those crabs, the military ain't stopping them.
They just bounce off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the bullets bounce off. Yeah.
Now, speaking of insects, you mentioned
Oh,
insects as part of your
oh yeah.
your
There's
three.
plenty of great insect books out there. One of my favorites is Blowfly by David Lohman. That it is a great insect attack book with flies laying their eggs in humans and just using us as breeding grounds, and it's pretty deep. In terms of the gore, not deep philosophically. I think most animal attack books, you go into them understanding they're going to be a fun pulpy read.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
another one called Killer Flies that's similar to Blowflies. That's just terrible. But no offense to whoever wrote that.
You mean it's terrible, like it's not a good read, or
Yeah,
it's
I mean, compared to Blowfly,
okay?
no, it's not. And I just read an ant book called The Colony, and it was one of those books where you just want to scream at the writer because I mean the concept and the plotting and the pacing was all great, but every time there was an attack, it was be, oh, I feel a sting, oh, I feel a sting, oh, they swarmed me, and there was like no detail. It was just like he was going, yep, they're covered in ants now and they're dead. And I was like, oh, you're not describing the gore? I mean, isn't that your job? Aren't you getting paid for that?
That's the
But,
fun part, right?
right, yeah.
That's the fun part. Have you ever attempted writing or using insects in your own writing? I can't remember if you have or not.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, I've worked with Sever Press for probably more than 15 years. And after I read Slither by Ed Lee, that is a great worm book. I really,
Yeah.
really wanted to do a worm book. And Sever Press was like, worms don't sell. So they had me write a jungle adventure book. I think it was called The Lost Relic. That might be the one. But I snuck worms into it and made worms like part of the jungle adventure and the climax with the evil Lovecraftian force. Because I was like, I've just got to write some worms. So, and they didn't get too mad. So, I mean,
I was gonna say, did they give you the side eye? They're like, yeah, we got worms in here, Eric.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, well, yeah.
I think worms should sell a bit more because they're kind of gross, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's a classic 70s movie called Squirms. Squirm, which is probably like the only killer worm cinema that's actual worms. Now, of course, there's trimmers, but that's a whole other thing than earthworms or little parasitic worms.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually just finished a book about not worms, but it was by the Sisters of Slaughter. Have you read them at all?
I have
Melissa?
not.
No, it's called Janitors versus the Undead.
Oh, I
And
saw your post about it, I think on
yeah,
social media, but I have not read it.
and it's little parasitic worms that create the zombies, and
Kind of like Night of the Creeps.
yeah, kind of. It's like
Okay.
that meeting Return of the Living Dead, and it's absolutely awesome. I highly recommend it, but it's not necessarily an animal attack book unless you can consider the parasites. But it's a lot of fun. It's definitely down our alley with the gore and the nastiness.
Well, it's probably one of those things that skirts the line, whether it's animal attack or zombie, and there are a lot of things like that. Yeah, we just mentioned Night of the Creeps, and I mean, so I guess it depends on how much they focus on the parasitic organism.
Yeah, honestly, I might put it in that because the parasitic worms are a big part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's described in a lot of detail. So,
Yeah, you could probably toss it in the animal attack genre, and it'd be fine.
yeah,
Just lump it in the insect side.
yeah, it's a lot of fun though, and it's funny too at points. So
Have you
what?
seen? Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry to cut
No,
you off. Have you
no,
seen Kingdom of Spiders with William Shatner?
no. You know
It's a
what?
tarantula attack movie from the 70s. If
I've
you
heard of it.
if you haven't seen it and you like Shatner, I mean it's Shatner and his most Shatner, and
Shatner.
it's killer spiders. So and there's a book of it too. There's a novelization, and I highly recommend either if you like campy horror stuff.
What is the name of that again?
Kingdom of Spiders.
Kingdom of Spiders. Awesome.
But you gotta like Shatner, otherwise you're just gonna not really get it.
Yeah. Do you feel like that movie was tailored for him?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Maybe he just got the script and said, "This is for me."
Yeah.
Who knows? But I mean, he does not get more Shatner than that movie. I mean, take Captain Kirk and multiply it by 10, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. So I want to know, what type of animals do you think make the best animal attack books?
Well, I'm gonna say definitely not snakes. I personally have a phobia of snakes. I have
Yeah.
since I was a kid, and every snake book I've read to date, I've read like Rattlers, The Mountain King, a couple others, and the snake books, for whatever reason, seem to go off the rails on sex instead of gore and animal attack stuff. And you're like, wait a minute, I thought there were snakes killing people. I don't really care who you're sleeping with or what you're doing, but so far I've yet to find a great snake book.
I wonder
So
if it's the the phallic sort of creature, sort
maybe,
of
who knows?
as a symbol for sex. But yeah, I there should be snake books without all that, right? Like, just to add some variety.
Yeah, and my snake limiting is limited because that is my personal phobia. So who knows? Maybe there are some great masterpieces out there I just have not made it to yet. I
Yeah,
will tell you,
maybe.
The Curse 2 is probably the definitive in terms of my own personal horror snake movie. I mean, it's no relation to Curse 1. Curse 1 was an adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's Color Out of Space, but Curse 2 had a guy who was bitten by like a mutated radioactive snake, and one of his arms becomes a snake. And at the end of the movie, a snake crawls out of his mouth, and that it terrified me so much as a child that I mean, it just took the phobias I already had and made them worse. But
Ah,
that's a horrific movie.
I was gonna ask if maybe that was the source of your fear of
No, no,
snakes,
the
but
source was running around in underoos, superhero underoos, when I was probably like 4 or 5, and standing on the head of a copperhead and
oh
having it
god,
strike at me as I ran away.
oh damn, yeah,
And then my
that
grandmother came out and killed it, put its body on the steps at her house, and of course, it was gone because the neurological stuff in snakes carry on for a while after you kill them. So its body had wandered off, and who knows? I
oh my
guess I
god,
thought it was always coming back for me.
that's terrifying. That would terrify me too. I imagine where you live though, you probably have a lot of snakes, don't you?
More than I would like. The house
Yeah.
I currently live in, we had one come in through a window about
Oh,
3, 4 years ago, and it wrapped itself around
oh my
the
god.
bar, the curtains. And we were watching TV in the living room, and we heard something fall in like the kitchen area where it came in. And we walked in there, and there was this gigantic, like 5, 6 foot black snake just wrapped
Oh,
throughout the curtain rod. And we were like, oh, yeah.
talk about animal attack in real
Yeah,
life.
my,
My
my
god.
my wife will not let me live down the fact that I was on top of the sofa screaming like a baby while she dealt with it. But yeah, I save her from spiders all the time, so she owed me that snake. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. But
Yeah. Do you have like favorites though? Favorite types of animals for an animal attack book?
I like them all. Dogs are probably my favorite because I own like all the dog books except for maybe one or two, and there's quite a few of them.
Hmm.
But something about dogs, because when I was a kid, I was afraid of dogs. And I spent all my life except for like the last 2 years hating dogs till I
Hmm.
got the dog I currently have, and she changed my view on all dogs. So dogs are the probably in a different way the scariest to me because I mean they are kind of killing machines. Nothing compared to a house cat, which we will get into when we get to our favorite books, but but dogs can be pretty vicious and they're loud and they snarl and no novel pitch there for my own book. But dogs just creep me out.
Yeah.
Uh,
Dogs are like one of my favorite animals for pets, but
mhm.
like TikTok and whatnot often forget, if you watch, I watch a lot of TikTok videos and I watch all the cute dog videos and whatnot, but they leave out the scary dogs because there's plenty of
Yeah,
those
and
too.
that might be an aspect of why they're so scary because they're man's best friend, and we totally forget that they're still animals, and given the right circumstances, even your precious baby can turn on you. You
Yeah.
know, so
Actually, my grandmother, she had this dog. It was like a toy something or other. It was a small dog, and she walked it every night. And she was attacked by another dog, which knocked her over and mauled her dog to death. This is when I was like a kid. I was like 3 or 4,
mm,
and she couldn't do anything about it. Like if it was me walking it now, I would probably be able to defend that little dog, but she couldn't,
mhm,
and it was like killed right in front of her, and
yeah.
that's awful, right? Like,
It's
but that
terrible and it's sad, but it's also nature that we have to live with
yeah,
on this
it's
planet.
something that happens, and yeah, I
Mhm,
think we need to remember that. I keep going back to this, but I think we need to remember that.
mhm.
All right, so I want to know some because I once wrote a short story about a cute animal that became violent, and I submitted it to a critique website. I don't know if you ever heard of critters.org.
Maybe at some point in my career, it kind of sounds familiar, but I've
Yeah,
always been kind of a loner. I mean,
yeah, I don't even
I
know if they're
joined
still out there, but
when I was young, I was in the HWA as an associate member before my career took off for maybe about a year or less. And
mhm.
I hated it. There was too much politics and backstabbing, and you couldn't trust anybody. And,
Oh yeah,
and then I I thought about joining the science fiction one because I way qualified for that. And people were like, oh, you need to. And I was just, even though the science fiction people are a whole lot nicer than the horror people and there's not as much backstabbing, I guess I've always just been a loner. I mean, so I don't really do critique groups or writers groups or even join the organizations, apparently.
yeah.
But,
Yeah, well, this I submitted that story to Critters for feedback, right? And
mhm.
a lot of people who critiqued the story for me, they went on about how you can't make a fluffy animal like a bunny rabbit scary, and that really stuck with me. I don't know why, but there's some example in children's fiction where bunny
Oh,
rabbits are scary, right? Like,
you clearly haven't read The Folly by David Ann.
yeah,
It is about genetically engineered rabbits that eat people. It's a very famous book.
but
And it gets really, really weird at the end. I
yeah,
won't spoil it for you, but it goes beyond just the bunny rabbits. But and
oh, nice,
it's if you get lucky, you can probably find a second printing on eBay for around $30. But that first print that's pictured in paperbacks from hell, I've been looking for a year and I've never seen one on the market anywhere.
yeah,
One, because the second print just has like a forest as the cover, but the first one actually has like this steely-eyed, blood dripping from its mouth rabbit, and
yeah,
that
yeah.
cover just doesn't exist anymore.
Which, it should.
It should. It should.
But I was wondering how, you know, gaining from your expertise here, how would you go about making like a cute little animal, like a hamster or something, into a scary monster?
Oh
I want
wow.
to, I want to erase
Early
the,
Monday morning, let's do hamsters. No pressure at all. No pressure at all. Yeah.
make a, make a hamster scary, Eric. Do it.
True. I might need a few more gallons of coffee before
Oh,
I'm
you know what?
capable of that. But
I think I
I'm
can do
sure
it.
there's a way. I'm sure someone did it at some point. If not, it will be done.
I
Because
think
just
I
about
can do it
every
actually,
animal has been
because
done.
anyone who's owned hamsters as pets know that they can be little nasty little beasts. They will bite.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
actually
I
had
mean,
it.
I guess
Go
just
ahead.
go with the rats formula and have them swarm you, right?
Yeah.
So
You don't want to be swarmed by
expand
killer
the
hamsters,
numbers.
that's
Yeah.
for sure, yeah. Do you what do you think about like symbolism that can be used in animal attack books? Animals often represent humanity's fears of the untamed wild, loss of control, or even societal pressures.
Oh yeah. I mean, whew. I mean, most animal attack books are just pulpy fiction for the fun of it and for the
Yeah.
gore. But I mean, most of them, well, not most, but a lot of them have a clear eco message too about, hey, we're screwing up the planet. And if we don't stop screwing up the planet, we are severely going to pay for it.
Hmm.
Whether it's animals, plants, or insects, that is a reoccurring constant theme in this specific subgenre. But it also gets into you can go with trust issues when you're coming down to the dog stuff. You can go with the anthropomorph. I can't talk.
It's Monday
There's
morning. Yeah, I'm having
yeah,
trouble too.
but anyhow, I mean, there's lots of themes that can be explored. But I'm going to go with the eco one being the prevalent one because
That
it
would make
is
a lot of
more.
sense, yeah. Especially when it comes to like mutations and whatnot and toxic waste. Toxic
But
waste, by
well,
the way, is
yeah,
one of
and,
my
and
favorites.
and the fear of losing our civilization as we know it, that going back to the wild and just how scary the wild is.
Yeah. And before I move on to your own work within this, you mentioned plants. That's something I didn't think of. Can you give some examples of plant attack? Now,
Fungus.
I know some myself, but I want your
Yeah.
expertise on that.
Harry Adam Smith, I think that's his name, wrote a book called Fungus, and that is a
Fungus.
great book. Day of the Triffids classic
I've read that
definitive
one, yeah.
classic definitive plant attack book. But fungus is horrific because it's not the fungus so much actively attacking you like an animal. It's growing on you and eating your flesh on you and turning you into this mindless plant zombie.
Nice, yeah.
And it's just a cool book. I mean,
And who's the author of that again?
I think it's Harry Adam Knight. I think.
Awesome.
But yeah,
Did you know?
there are plenty of plant books. I think there's one called Dust that's fairly more modern, but I can't remember who wrote it. And if I stepped away from my screen, I could go tell you a lot more, but I'm not leaving my screen right now.
Yeah, yeah. Did you know? Have you ever heard about the zombie ants? Where fungus kills and then
Oh yeah, yep,
controls
yep.
the zombie or the ants. That's
Mhm.
terrifying on its own. That's a fungus thing, right? But
Yeah,
I mean,
there's an
that's
animal
that's
attack
real
movie
life.
based on that specific premise, though I don't recall which one it is right
Yeah.
now.
But that's real life stuff, man. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Fungus is both helpful to us, but it can also, kill us.
Mhm.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about Snarl a little bit because that was a passion project of yours, but there's some interesting things in that, and we kind of brushed upon this already. So I guess that maybe I should skip that. But I wanted to talk about how we've made things too Disney. But I wanted to talk about your because you kind of go into it in your introduction about dogs and the possibility of dog attacks, and would you like to talk about that a little bit more?
Oh gosh, yeah. Holding it upside down here. Snarl was indeed a passion project for me because, as a kid, I was attacked by a dog, not as viciously as the copperhead thing, but my grandmother had a big dog, and it was just so huge it would come like roll me over. And while it wasn't actually aggressively attacking me, as a little kid, you can't tell the difference when there's a
Yeah.
big dog in your face. And movies like Cujo and stuff really drive that point home. And yeah, not liking dogs for the bulk of my existence on this planet and finding them either scary or evil, I and reading all the animal attack stuff that I have in the last year, I really wanted to write a book that was dogs. Kind of like when I did Bigfoot War, Bigfoot War comes from me having nightmares about Sasquatch from living in this rural area of North Carolina and thinking he was going to come through my bedroom window and smash through the wall like the Kool-Aid man and just tear me apart.
Yeah.
And Snarl is kind of my take on my childhood fears of dogs, but amped up. It's not rabies. The rabies is sick and vicious, but this one's actually a bioweapon that functions much like the rage virus in 28 days later. And it just drives all the canines into this feral attack mode. And you get all these horrific scenes of people's pets turning on them. And um, I won't lie. When I was writing Snarl, I went back. When I finished it, I went back to the beginning and went through every scene and tried to make it gorier than the first time I wrote it. And
Well,
that is the first time I've ever done that in my career. So, Snarl, Lord willing, is the goriest thing I've ever written. It's probably not because I've written so many books in the last 20 some years, but it was the one I put the most effort into being the most visceral, disgusting thing that I could because I really wanted to hit that 80s vibe. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but like in a lot of animal attack books in the 80s, whether it was Killer Moss, like in The Blight by Mark Saunders, or dog books, you have all this visceral attack of the genitals and all these private area parts. They're just kind of like, So
yeah.
I went for a little of that with Snarl. Not as bad as the 80s books, but I wanted it to feel very much like an 80s read when he picked up Snarl.
As,
Yeah, I wanted it to be an homage to Paperbacks from Hell.
I
So
as I mentioned earlier, there's an intestine scene in there and involving a dog and the woods, and that's going to live rent free in my mind for a long time.
Lucio Fulci was known as the king of eyeball gore in Italian cinema. And one thing I get a lot in my feedback from readers is at some point in my career, I think I'm becoming like the people think I have this obsession with guts and intestines because there's so much intestinal gore in my books. And I just like tearing open the stomach, for that effect and doing all these crazy, horrible things there. So I guess if Fulci was the eyeball king, I'm apparently becoming the guts king. And
Yeah.
it's kind of just wrong, but hey, I'm going to run with it because it's my job. So
Yeah. Well, intestines are fun to play with in books. Uh, you're going to
I'm
see
glad
some.
you added in books. Thank you, Jason.
No, in real life too. What are you
Oh,
That's gross. But you're
really?
gonna
That's
see you're gonna see some intestines in my latest installment in our book. There, I'm just gonna
awesome.
warn you. But it was Snarl was a lot of fun to read, as I mentioned. Do you remember the actual seed that spawned it? Was it your? I guess it was your fear of dogs and
Yeah,
dog
yeah. It
attacks,
was
right?
it was not liking dogs for all those years.
Yeah.
And and I really wanted to play on that, how much society puts dogs above of children in some cases at this point, and how for some people dogs are their children, and how much we've humanized canines. And I wanted to strip some of that away and show what canines actually could be in a
Hmm.
very fearful manner. Like there's one scene in the book where this lady was just driving down the road in her car, and her little poodle hops
Yeah.
up and like rips out her throat, and the car crashes. And
I remember
while
that
that's
scene
not a
well too.
huge, yeah, while it's not a huge scene, it speaks to the core of what I was trying to do with Snarl, and
Yeah.
how that even though we love them and they love us, they're still animals.
Yeah.
And in the case of Snarl, again, it's a virus type thing, not them turning on us just out of instinct, but it shows what could happen even out of instinct if we did something wrong.
Yeah.
So,
And that book ends pretty grim as well, but I love it. It's one of my favorites.
well, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so I think do you have anything else you want to add to animal attacks? Anything that I might have missed?
No, no, you had mentioned doing our top three, so I am prepared for that.
Do you have
Uh,
honorable mentions as well?
well, honorable mentions. I will have to think about that as we're going here, but I will tell you in Paperbacks from Hell, Grady Hendrix mentions a book called The Cats, which was written by Nick Sherman. And I will tell you, if you've never read an animal attack book, Cats is not that bad. It's decent, but if you really want a cat book, I'm getting the wrong book picked up here. You need to read Claw.
Mm.
This takes place on a small secluded island where the people can't get off the island during a storm. And it's a fishing island where cats have just been let loose to breed and breed and breed.
Mm.
And it is a small town overrun by cats. And of course, it has your typical cats eat a baby trope that was in the 80s horror. But I mean, it's visceral, it's action packed, it's apocalyptic feeling, and it just blows the heck out of Nick Sherman's The Cats. I mean, Jack Younger, I think that's the author's name, just did a masterwork of cat fiction here.
That's
So,
awesome. I have a few here. I wanted to talk about Meg by Steve Alton. That book is a
oh,
lot of fun.
sharks. Yep.
And of course, they made that into a movie. It's about the megalodon shark not being extinct after all, and it, of course, attacks like an underwater science type station. Uh, I watched the movie first, and then I went back and read the book, and I just had a lot of fun with it.
Mhm.
Um, it's not very gory though. I guess it would be hard to be gory, but the book goes into more of the
Mhm.
killings, like that the movie only touches upon, like when the megalodon reaches the beach
Mhm.
in the
And
movie. They
and you
they
don't
kind of
always have to have the gore. The gore is just an added bonus sometimes.
oh for
But
sure,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
But like when the megalodon reaches the beach in the movie, I don't even know if it does reach. I can't remember, but I know it does in the book, and it gets pretty nasty there a bit. But
Mhm.
it's just a fun book. The next one I have here, I don't know if it counts because it's like a beast that doesn't actually exist, but I put it here anyway because it has that animal attack feel to it, and that's Crota by L. Goingback.
Mhm.
This book has some pretty interesting gore to it. Like I am a bit of a gore hound. When I go into these books, I'm reading them because I want to be I want the gore, honestly. I want the fun,
Yeah.
right? And this one has some of that.
He's a brilliant writer. I will
Oh,
admit
for
I
sure.
haven't read that one, but he's a brilliant writer for
Oh,
sure.
Crota is awesome. I highly recommend it.
I'm
And
going to give you another one of mine if you're good.
yeah, no, go right
Okay.
ahead.
So when I first started reading Animal Attack books, right after Paperbacks from Hell, this book here is the one I started with. I'm trying to get it close to the camera so you can see all the little bats on the
Oh yeah,
cover.
yeah.
Yeah. So this
Yes,
is about,
Nightwing.
yes, Nightwing. There's a movie of it. The movie does not do the book justice in any form or fashion. The movie is actually kind of slow. It's a cult classic, but it's not one I can just say, yeah, you need to go watch Nightwing. But the book is amazing. And yes, it's about rabid bats spreading rabies across the entire state, but the core of the book is its characters. It is focused on indigenous Native American people and their culture. I think it's the Hopi tribe, but I can't remember. Yeah, I've read it so many times. But anyhow, it kind of talks about how white culture is taking over Native American culture, and the whole premise of the story is a Native American shaman who decides that the world needs to be wiped out and only his people survive. So he kills himself in a big ritual to summon all these bats.
Hmm.
That's the premise of the attack. And you have the other main character is a Native American who's in a position of law enforcement. And he's the only one who really understands what's going on with the bats and the curse the shaman has summoned. But it is a intense character book. You will love the characters, and the characters make the story. Yeah, it breaks my heart to say this when talking about Animal Attack books, but with Nightwing, it's the characters who make the story, not the
Nice.
animals and the gore.
Yeah.
So it was a very moving one for me. And it, like I said, it was the first one that I read when I really got heavily back into it, and it just blew me away. I was like, wow, this guy can write. It's Martin Cruz Smith, by the way. He's famous for like Gorky Park and a lot of other books, but to me, Nightwing was his masterpiece.
Is that Cruz with a Z?
It is Cruz with a Z. Martin Cruz Smith, Cruz Smith.
My next honorable mention here is a very thick book. It's a doorstopper. It's The Terror by Dan Simmons.
Oh,
of course, this is about the Franklin expedition, and it sort of goes into maybe what happened. Of course, it's not what happened, but it's a fun take on it. And there's a giant polar bear in it that's definitely a mythological type of creature, but it's still taking out the crew, and it's just a lot of fun reading it. I've talked about it quite a bit here.
It is a beautiful historical read. I mean, I'm a sucker for period piece, and Simmons is a great writer, anyhow. So I absolutely agree that Terra is a fantastic book.
Yeah, I don't know if people would think
I
of
can
it.
totally see why it made your top 3.
Yeah, I don't know if people would think of it as an
Yeah.
animal attack book, but there's definitely that element in there.
Probably. I mean, there's elements of it, but that's not what the book is. Is how I would go. There's definitely elements that come across as an animal attack book, but it's not officially in that genre. So
yeah. Do you have any other honorable mentions?
Well, since we were going with top 3, one that actually scared the heck out of me and bothered me as a human being was Slime by John Halkin. And I did not pull my copy of it, but it is about killer jellyfish. And
Yeah.
and most of these animal attack books are set in Europe because that's where the big trend was. But the jellyfish go from the salt water to the fresh water later on in the book. So just kind of like in that famous Sean Hudson slugs, where people are ingesting the slugs and it's killing them. Same thing happens with jellyfish and slime, and it's as gory as slugs is, and as iconic of animal attack book as slugs is. Slime is far more disturbing. It was Halkin at his best.
Awesome. So. All right, so how about
you, right?
Yeah, do you have any other honorable mentions, or should we move on to the top 3?
Oh, I just did my top three.
Oh, so that was your
Those are my
third.
top three. Yes.
Okay, okay, yeah, I'll go
Fall by
then.
Jack Younger, Nightwing by Martin Cruz Smith, and Slime by John Hawkins were my top three. So I was going in
Oh,
reverse order,
okay.
and I apologize.
Nope,
That's
nope,
on
no
me,
worries.
viewers.
I'll go into my top three then. At number three, I have The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is, I think, a brilliant take on slasher fiction, honestly. It's about a group of. I noticed that you're frozen there, Eric. Are you still here?
Are we back?
Yeah, you're back. What time are we at here?
Okay, I don't know what happened there. I've upgraded my internet post Helene. If you don't know, my area was devastated by a hurricane called Helene at the end of last year, but I've upgraded my internet and everything's repaired now. So I have no idea what just happened, but
It
I'll
happens. It
take the
happens.
blame for it.
No, no worries. I marked down the time so I can edit that out. But
Okay.
my third is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I This is, I think, a brilliant take on the slasher genre, but it's also a person taking on the form of an animal to get the revenge of something that happened during a hunting expedition that a group of indigenous friends went on. If you know anything about indigenous peoples, when they hunt, they often do it respectfully.
Hmm.
When they kill an animal, they use the entire bodies, and they also thank the animal for giving. Well, they apologize to the animal, and they're thankful for what they get. But during this hunting expedition, things go out of control. I'll leave it at that. And sort of like the spirit of these animals take the form of this crazy and spooky looking woman with an elk head that like wreaks havoc on these four friends. And it's split up into like four or five different parts. So you could read it as a collection of stories. It's not necessarily linear, but there's some pretty creative kills in this book. And it's one of my favorites by Stephen Graham Jones.
Stephen Graham Jones is on my read list for this year. So many people have told he's fantastic, that his work is fantastic. And I've looked him up and he seems like a great person from his interviews. So
Yeah.
hopefully I will get to experience that one soon. And on a side note, you couldn't tell it from looking at me. I'm as white as white comes as a Southern redneck guy. But if you go back enough generations in my family, my however many times great grandfather back was actually a fairly famous Native American indigenous medicine man shaman who
Awesome.
traveled this region where I still live, like helping people.
Yeah.
So
Awesome.
maybe that's part of my why. Yeah, because I'm a fan of indigenous culture because I think they've got a much more grip on what's going on than we do at times with nature. Um, so that hopefully no one thinks I'm culturally appropriating. When I say, I don't even know what I'm saying. Just edit that out.
No, if it's in your blood, it's in your blood, right?
Yeah.
And you have
Well,
appreciation
yeah,
for
yeah.
the
I
culture.
truly appreciate indigenous Native American cultures where I'm trying to come from
I
with
have the
that.
same thing. I truly appreciate, and I like learning about it too. I've read a
Mhm,
few books, both fiction and nonfiction.
mhm,
It's a very rich tapestry of culture that I think is deeper than our
mhm.
own, and we could probably make an episode of that all on its own.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah,
'80s animal attack genre was rampant with indigenous vengeance stories,
yeah,
and a lot of them had no idea about the culture they were writing about. They were just running on stereotypes, and I mean, I'm sure it gets pretty insulting, but at the same time, there were a few that were written by actual indigenous people, even in the '80s, that they're just fantastic books.
also in the 90s, that's when Al Going Back, I believe, started
Mhm.
writing,
Yep.
and his books are really good. um
Mhm.
I maybe should even put that in my. It was hard making my top three. I'm just gonna say that. I went with Only Good Indians because that story is it's a little bit deeper and more in depth than Crota was. But Crota was a lot of fun, and there's a lot of great characterization in that as well. But my number two goes to Devolution by Max Brooks.
I
This
have
is
never read that one. I did not know that one existed actually until you mentioned it.
it's really good. It takes World War Z that
I'm
Max
very
Brooks made.
familiar with World War Z. Yep.
It's a similar concept where it's like found footage.
Hmm.
The found footage being this group of people are living in a cabin for a certain period of time, and a volcano blows near them, and that drives. First of all, the volcano blowing traps them where they are, and it drives all the animals out their way, and this includes a family or a group of Sasquatch who
Hmm.
begin attacking their cabin. And so later on, after all the debris has been filtered through, and they find that these people are missing, or maybe it's even they find their bodies. I can't remember that, but they find like the records of what they kept while they were being attacked, and it's a very awesome book. It's like uh it's like adrenaline, it's once it gets going, it has kind of like a slow start to it where they're like admiring nature and stuff. And that, I have to admit, that part kind of annoyed me a little bit because it just goes on and on. But once the attack starts, it gets very relentless, and the intensity just remains throughout until the rest, or for the rest of the novel. So I highly recommend that. And my number one is a book. I'm a big Stephen King fan, and but I'd never read Cujo because the idea of reading Cujo scared me.
Hmm.
Um, because I knew how it ended. I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah, the movie changes that.
Yeah, the movie
Um,
changes that, but that's what I was afraid of reading. Especially after I had my son, right? Uh,
mhm,
but I ended up tackling it anyway last year, and I absolutely adore this story. Oh my god,
mhm.
of course it's Stephen King, right? But
Right.
what
Yep.
you get is you get like a family drama that's completely hijacked by a rabid dog.
Mhm,
And I my biggest complaint about this book is the ending kind of drags out too long. He creates this tension, and he holds on to it for maybe just a little too long, but it ends up going where it goes. And
mhm,
it's not quite as tragic as I thought it would be, although it is. I'm going to spoil it here, so anyone who hasn't read Cujo and doesn't want to be spoiled, fast forward maybe a minute or two. But I thought that the boy was going to die via the dog, like finally getting him into its maw. And the reason why I was like, when it comes to like maybe a book that you would write, if when
mhm,
kids are being killed, it's more in a fun way. But I knew that Stephen King would make it personable somehow, sort of like Pet Cemetery is, right?
mhm,
And I was afraid of tackling, like getting attached to the boy, and feeling like their family on their
mhm,
own, humanizing the kid to death, and then having the dog maul him to death. But the way he actually does die is quite more simple than that. It's dehydration,
mhm,
and it's tragic still, but it's not as violent as I thought it would be. But still,
mhm.
this book,
Which kind of makes it more poignant, as you
yeah,
said. Yeah,
for
for
sure,
sure.
yeah. But the book is, um, uh, it's funny that he doesn't remember writing it because he was so drunk when he wrote it. But it's like
Oh,
I wish I had that sort of brain power,
that's
because
true. Now,
like if you're that blackout drunk
right.
while writing a book and it's still that good, it's like nobody can do that. Not
Well, King is like Lovecraft. He is a brilliant, brilliant writer and just not a great person. But that's just my opinion, mind you. But brilliant
Mhm.
writer, but not a great person. And
Yeah.
as an alternative to Cujo, I've got to mention this book. It probably should have been in my top three, but it's Man Stopper by Douglas Borton.
Oh, nice.
This book is about four attack dogs who are trained to kill people by a corporation, like a corporation that trains security dogs. And the truck carrying them to wherever they've been sold to wrecks, and they get loose in a small town. And they work as like this highly trained military pack, just tearing everybody apart. And half the book probably sold from the perspective of the dogs. There's a Doberman Pinscher named Razor, And if you read this book and you don't fall in love with Razor, there's something wrong with you as a human being. But, but anyhow, I mean, after reading that book, it's not only my favorite dog attack book, but it really made me want to get a Doberman Pinscher, because that's what Razor is. And my wife, unfortunately, she loves dogs, but she had some trauma with a Doberman as a child. So she was like, you were never getting a Doberman.
Yeah.
But I mean, Manstopper is a fantastic dog book if you're looking for a dog breed as an alternative to Cujo. There's no poignant death of a small child from dehydration, but there's a lot of emotional stuff with the dogs, because it's not the dog's fault that they've been trained to do this, and you kind of
Yeah.
get the dog perspective of what's going on in
Yeah.
Manstopper.
And my message about be wary of animals, it really all goes down to the training.
Mhm.
I don't think any dog breed is inherently evil. It again goes back to what the breed, like I'm obviously going into some breeds that have been banned.
Mhm.
And it's not the dog's fault. It's that they're often used for fighting,
Mhm.
and that's obviously wrong for so many reasons. But you get these people who train dogs to fight illegally,
Mhm.
and then they don't like leash their dogs, and then of
Mhm.
course the dogs go out and attack people.
Yeah.
But it all comes down to training. If we could just take care of our animals to be loving creatures. But then there's also the idea that some animals aren't just like, they're kind of like humans. They're just not right in the
And
head.
Dobermans are a breed that's very stereotyped as being a
Yeah.
super aggressive killer dog, because they are used so much by security firms and the police and military as attack dogs, just like German Shepherds. And they're both highly intelligent breeds. So
Yeah.
I mean, whether or not they are, my wife swears that they're vicious. But like I said, she had a bad experience with them. But I would hope that, if they were raised in a kind and loving environment, you could have a wonderful pet Doberman, which I will never be allowed to have. No offense, Sonny. But
Well, they look scary too, right?
they do. They're very sleek and beautiful.
I think often they're used as like hounds of hell in movies.
Yeah.
If you're gonna have like a hound of hell, it's got to be a Doberman with the clipped ears
Mhm.
and the clipped tail, and it just looks like an evil dog right there. But often they're just little cuddle bums, like any poodle, right?
And going
Uh,
back to the breed thing, I think part of that is what makes Cujo work so well.
yeah, the Saint Bernard.
Yeah, because you don't typically think of the Saint Bernard as an attack dog. At least
Yeah,
I don't.
no,
But
they're giant dogs, but they're
but
very
they come
furry.
across as kinda cute, lovable dogs,
Yeah,
even despite
exactly.
their
Yeah,
size. Yeah.
absolutely.
And weren't they rescue dogs at one point, or am I getting
Yeah, I
them
think they
mixed
were
up?
used for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like in
because
cartoons, like Warner Brother cartoons, or those Saint Bernards that carry the little keg under their neck in the Arctic
yeah,
rescuing dogs.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
so
King used the Saint Bernard in order to like subvert the
yeah,
expectation of that,
mhm,
right?
right.
And it works brilliantly. I mean, the
It
movie
does.
version, the dog just looks almost possessed, right? It's like
Mhm.
it gets all gray and covered in mud, and
Speaking of dog attack books, I've got to throw in one more, and that's The Pack. I think the writer's David Fisher. It actually predates Cujo, and it is a fantastic book. And I'm going to spoil it for you because it's worth being spoiled for. Okay. It was written in the 70s,
uh-huh.
at a time where women don't quite have everything they do today in terms of their rights and how our cultural culture sees them. But in The Pack, it's not the gun-loving hunter brother or the tough, gnarly grandfather or even the dad who saves the day. In The Pack, it's the mom who steps up and saves the survivors of the family from the dogs. And
Right.
I mean, to me, that was a very awesome thing to be in that time period and having a strong female character who wasn't there for political reasons so much as just it was realistic that the mom was going to be the one who saved her children,
Hmm.
and yeah, that book just struck me as an underlooked book that is a good representation of women as something other than a screaming trope, like, what I mean, the fall down girl, the girl who's running and falls down the serial killer movie. you
Yeah.
know it's the mom taking charge and going, you ain't eating my kids. So
Yeah.
but
Well, moms in the human animal kingdom can be very very, very protective of their kids, just like beavers. You don't want to
Yeah.
mess with the mom.
But I
I've
mean,
heard.
it just struck me as a very, ahead of its time novel because it is the female protagonist who steps up
Yeah,
at the end. And well, I mean, the female character who steps up and saves the day and becomes the main character of the book.
yeah, and that's The Pack
The Pack. Yep. There was a
by
movie of it made in the 70s. I think the name was David Fisher,
David
but
Fisher.
it's spelled with a C, I think.
Okay.
There are two books called The Pack. The other one's written by a guy named Essex, and I think that's his last name. And while it is also a good book, it's not to me as culturally important as The Pack. I mean, it wasn't carrying that kind of a message, but and it has kind of a weak ending. But the other Pack by Essex is also worth reading. It's just not as amazing as Fisher's.
Awesome. Are there any more books you'd like to discuss? Or have we
Oh gosh. I think we've covered a lot.
I think we
But
have. Yeah.
yeah. So
All right.
nothing springs immediately to mind.
All
But
right. So I think we've nailed this topic of animal attack. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise with this. And yeah, so I think that's it if you're done.
yeah, I'm good. Thank
All
you for
right.
having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
All right. And as always, you're always invited to come back. Just let me know and
Thank you.
we'll schedule something in the future.
And I'm sure that we will keep the viewers posted on our collaboration and when it comes out this fall, summer, because it will
Absolutely.
definitely be a fun animal attack read.
All right. And thank you again for everything.
Oh, thank you, Jason.